Hello everybody, it's Sarah and today I'm back again with a 7 on Sunday. 7 on Sunday was created by Grace from Cheese Whistle and I will leave her channel linked down below, and I will also leave the Goodreads group for 7 on Sunday linked down below if you want to know more info on what this exactly is. But basically we get a topic each week and we share 7 books or so about that topic, and this week's topic is the 7 books that we don't talk about enough. And basically what this is supposed to do is to give us a chance to shine a limelight on those books that for some reason never get chosen in the tags, that never get talked about on our channel, even though we really do love those books. And so yeah, I have actually not 7 but 8 books, but I also don't really have specific books, but kind of types of books that I don't talk about enough. And then I have like an example book for each type of book that I don't talk about enough. The first type of book is a recent favorite, and that is kind of the books that I read that year or the year before that I haven't really had the chance to sit on them yet, that I haven't really had the chance to think on them yet, that I haven't really had the chance to reread maybe if I want to do a reread. And so they just kind of miss out against my all-time favorites, even though they might have been 4 or 5-star books. And the example that I have for that is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. This is a high fantasy book that's just really funny and light-hearted, but also kind of not, and it just has the right amount of absurd for me. For example, I have talked about it before that Terry Pratchett, I really can appreciate his writing and his world building. However, for me personally, he gets kind of a little bit too absurd a lot of the times. And with Nicholas Ames, it's just the right amount of funny for me. This is a story set in a world where mercenary bands are kind of like the rock stars of this world. And we have this group of old grizzled warriors that are kind of like, they have settled down again, they've stopped fighting. However, one day they have to come together again. They used to be the most famous mercenary band that existed in this world, and they have to come together again because the leader's daughter is in trouble, and so they have to go and save her. And it's just really funny and kind of cheeky, and I love it. Along similar lines of the book beforehand, I also have those books where there's only the first book in a series out yet, or I've only read the first book in a series yet, and even though I might have really enjoyed that book, I don't really feel comfortable talking about that book, or I don't really reach for that book within like questions for tags or prompts for tags, because I want to continue on with the series first and I want to get a feel for the series first. And my example for that is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Preto. This is the first book in a trilogy probably, I guess. Heart of Flames actually has already been published, but I'm gonna wait until I can get the paperback to buy and read it. And this is set in a kind of Mesoamerican, Middle American, Aztec influenced world, and we follow this girl who wants to become a phoenix rider. However, it's like the classical story of only men can become phoenix riders, and there's a lot of secrets that she finds out and that she discovers. And this was just a really engaging high fantasy story for me, especially for YA, which I usually find to be very light. However, this has a lot more depth than I usually personally find in YA high fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. However, I kind of won't talk more about it or won't mention it more until I have read Heart of Flames. And maybe I won't even start mentioning it after I read Heart of Flames, because I find that it just ended up being mediocre, but it's just still the type of book where I've only read the first book, and I feel like, especially with series, it's kind of hard to judge how good like the whole story is going to be. Then I just have the series that are good, but that just aren't as good as other series that I've read. For example, the Draconis Memoria series by Anthony Ryan. I really love the world building in this series. It's kind of a steampunk style setting, but with dragons. But the dragons aren't like good and wise dragons, but they're just like really aggressive animals. And I do really love it. I like the kind of magic system, because you have those people, kind of as with Brandon Sanderson and Elemency, where you can ingest metals and then you get special powers. You have people who can kind of inject themselves with dragon blood and then they get special powers. And yeah, did really enjoy the world building and the setting. However, the series overall, I found it to be like a little weak in places. And so while I do enjoy the series overall, and while I would recommend it to like hardy fantasy fans who know a lot about fantasy already, I don't think this is a series for fantasy beginners at all. I just don't end up talking about the series, frankly speaking. But yeah, now I did have the chance to talk about it. So next I have an example for a book that I read kind of frequently. Like, it's not one of my old favorites, but I read it before BookTube, and I might not be able to remember as much of the story as I would like, even though I remember really loving the story, and even though I think I would still really love the story now. But I'm not sure enough in what the book is to recommend it or to talk about it like confidently. So my camera just randomly turned off. Anyway, my example for that type of book is The Child Thief by Brom, which I remember really loving it when I read it. However, I mean, I haven't had the time to reread it yet. Also, this is a dark Peter Pan retelling, which absolutely amazing. But I haven't had the time yet to reread it, and also, for some reason, just like after I finished reading it, my copy of the book just fell apart, and so I need to get a new copy before I start reading it, I guess. But yeah, I did really enjoy it and I appreciate it, and I can recommend it, I guess. The next type of book is also like my childhood favorites, but that I haven't reread in the past 10 years or 15 years or so. And so I also just rarely think about them when I do tags. And for that I have the example of the Bartimaeus sequence by Jonathan Stroud. This is a kind of alternate universe, urban fantasy type setting, set in London, where you have magicians that kind of just can summon demons. And yeah, we follow our main character Bartimaeus, who is such a demon, and his shenanigans that he's up to. And yeah, I really enjoyed this series as a younger Sarah, but I haven't read it in years and years, and so I never talk about it on my channel. Along the same lines, I have the series that aren't written by English authors or aren't well known or easily accessible in English, where I only have one exception that I talk about, and that is The Chronicles of the Emerged World by Licia Troisi. My example for this is Das Tal der Wölfe, in English The Valley of the Wolves by, I'm not gonna try to pronounce the name, I think it's Laura Gallego Garcia, who is a Spanish author, and this was one of my favorite books as like 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old. I read that so often, I think I must have read it like 3 times a year at least. And it follows this girl who goes to become a magician, and she goes to this like tower type school, and she has a friend, and there's like stuff going on there that's kind of iffy, and I really loved it. However, again, I don't even know if it is available in English, and so I kind of don't really see a lot of use talking about it. Also, this is another one of those books that I just haven't read in 10 to 15 years, although I know a lot more about it still than about Bartimaeus, because it's a short book and it's just one book, and I read it a lot more often than Bartimaeus. My 7th type of book is the classics that I really enjoyed, but that just aren't my favorite classics, along the lines of The Picture of Dorian Gray. And my example for that is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. This is a kind of Gothic story? Is it Gothic? I'm so wonky on my English literature epochs. But we follow this young woman who moves out into Dartmoor in Cornwall, and she moves to this inn called Jamaica Inn, and there's some weird stuff going on there, and I actually got this copy of the book at Jamaica Inn. Where is it? There. I got this copy of the book at Jamaica Inn. And yeah, so I really enjoyed this book, but it's like not one of my all-time favorite classics, so to speak. And then lastly, I know this is 8 and not 7, like let me live. But lastly, I have the books by the authors that I love that aren't my favorite series of that author. And for example, I have here Anne Bishop's the other series. I do know I talk about Anne Bishop a lot, and I do try, actually, Anne Bishop is the one author where I try to kind of not only always talk about the Black Jewels, but also talk about her other series. But yeah, anyway, The Others is an urban fantasy, but not set in our world, but like in an alternate world, although it's pretty much our world. And you have this main character who ran away from this place where she was held because she's a Cassandra Sung, which means when she cuts herself, she can see the future. And she runs to the others, which in this world is like werewolves, vampires, and so on. And they're kind of like looked at with suspicion. However, Meg, who is our main character, finds herself a family for the first time, friends for the first time. And it's just really, really beautiful, and I would highly, highly recommend you pick this book up. But yeah, that was it for this 7 on Sunday. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. Tell me in the comments down below your thoughts on the books that I have talked about here. And also, what are some books that you really love but that you just don't find yourself talking about for whatever reason. And yeah, all the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!